Hi guys.
We are going to use this opportunity to give a recap from our recent gravel event and also tie in our recent off road triathlon event. So, we did back to back races these past 2 weeks, two completely different races. But we wanted to use this as an opportunity to share why we feel that doing some non-tri events can help strengthen your love and passion for triathlon, assuming that you're a triathlete who's listening to this, but also that it can help with your health and your longevity as a triathlete as well. So we really feel strongly that, and we've learned this over the past few years, and we thank the COVID situation for this, that forced us to stop triathlon, to seek out different ways to exercise and to train in different events. And it really showed us that we love triathlon and we love being triathletes, but doing the same thing over and over again, especially when you've been doing it for a decade, 2 decades, or just several years, or maybe in different phases of your life, it can be really beneficial to change things up and to explore different events that aren't just the standard triathlon.
And there are also some really good lessons to be learned in these non-triathlon events that you can then use in your triathlons.
Absolutely. So the first event that we want to recap is the Six Gap Gravel event. It was the inaugural event in Dahlonega, Georgia, and we have done the road version of Six Gap a few times, and we love the Dahlonega area. It's very beautiful. But this, we were very intrigued. And actually, we had originally signed up, registered for two back to back long distance events. So we had signed up for the bootlegger, which was 107 miles in Lenoir, North Carolina. And then the following weekend, we were going to do the Six Gap Gravel event. So we were going to use it as two big training blocks or weekends. Primarily to help Corel because he's got the Oregon Gravel Grinder race, stage race. He's got the Breck Epic stage race. So he's got a lot of these big events. And we thought it would be really good training for him.
Yeah, but we also discussed that it will be also good for you for your extreme triathlons because it's a lot of torque and power over many hours that you just can't get in normal training.
Yeah. And a big part of the extreme tri, at least for me, is learning to deal with things that I've never dealt with before. So the more I put myself into these new unknowns and long distance events where it really fatigues me and makes me go to places that I've never gone before mentally and physically, it's only going to help me prepare for these extreme events, extreme tries. So the event was 91 miles, almost about 11,000 feet of climbing. So really big event on primarily gravel. So of those 91 miles, about maybe 20 of those miles was on the road.
I think maybe even less.
Could be less.
I think it was less.
So it was really a true gravel race. Now the lead up going into the race. So I want to talk about mental health because I think sometimes we think about, oh, I have a sickness, I have an injury, I can't do the race. But what about mental health? And I think mental health is very important, and we want to see it just like you would say to someone, I can't do this because I have the flu, I have an injury. You can say the same, that I'm not in a good place mentally, or my mental health is not in a great place right now, and that's why I'm missing the race. And I definitely felt a little bit of defeat missing a race that we were both really looking up for, but we both had our reasons to not do it. So first of all, Corel had experienced a really hard fall at a mountain bike event about 5 weeks ago, and it was still not healing, and he needed to be on antibiotics because he got the wound drained, got some fluid taken out and put on antibiotics because of the risk for infection. We never take antibiotics unless it's a super emergency situation, which this was.
And I remember last time when I had antibiotics.
Yeah, and it really made him feel super lousy, but also the risk of pushing yourself for 6+ hours on antibiotics just wasn't worth it for
Yeah, and
him.
plus at the time I still have this weird alien growing out of my hip. It's kind of what I called it, and I needed to keep the compression on for 24 hours a day, putting the ice on, and it's just, it would not be smart. We would not suggest this to any of our athletes to do the race under these conditions. So we should also stick to what we preach.
Yep. And the other thing is that we received some news from the vet about Campy when I took Campy in, because he hadn't been eating for a few days, and we learned that his kidneys are declining at his old age of 15 and a half years old. Kind of explains a lot of the things that he's been struggling with. And it just really, even though we knew that he is getting older, and we're not saying that his time to go is, in a week, but just to hear that and just to have to process that was really hard for me. And it really affected me for several days. And I had a lot of anxiety. I didn't want to leave the house. I didn't want to leave Campy. It was very hard for me to focus. I was feeling a lot of pressure in my chest. It was just really hard. And I feel better now just because I've given myself time to process and talk and to work through that. But at that time, I just wasn't in a place to mentally suffer for the race. And I knew it was not the right decision for me to go by myself, knowing that Corell's not going to be there. It was supposed to be raining that day. And when we race, we don't just physically suffer, we also mentally suffer. And you have to be in a position where mentally you're able to accept that physical or that mental demand that is placed on you on race day. You also need to think about that if mentally you're not doing well for whatever reason, you might not be sleeping well, you might not be eating well, you might be off your normal routine. And those are also reasons why you might not be in the best position to do a race. So with a lot of box checked, I just decided it would not be good to do the race. We still got training. We still were able to do training sessions just because the exercise is still good for mental and physical health, but we just didn't want to put ourselves into this extreme race environment. So why did we do this? What was the purpose of this 6-gap gravel event? Well, first of all, we love riding in new locations. I think it's something really good and invigorating to be able to ride somewhere different on a course that's marked or as a map. It's kind of like, it's an event, so there's going to be other people there. And I think it's really great to change up your normal environment. An event can be a great way to do that. Also, this is a great fitness boost. We get to train all day, and that can be really great neither of us kind of tapered for this event. I did a long run the day before. Corell did several hours of riding on gravel the day before, and we just stuck to our normal training. So we're just seeing this as a long training day. We also get to test and learn for future races, even if our future races are triathlons or mountain biking races or off-road triathlons, whatever it is, you're still applying very similar skills and tools and lessons learned, no matter what event you're doing. So there's always some kind of transfer over, whether it's physical or mental. Anytime you show up to a race, that there's going to be obstacles or setbacks or something that you have to overcome, and you just can't deal with those things in training, or you're not going to experience them in training like you will on race day. So a race environment or an event environment is the only time when you can really see how well you do with tough situations. It's easy when you're at home, you can just stop. You always have tomorrow, or you can just, nobody's watching you. You don't feel the pressure. You're not having a finish line to cross. So I really think that these events is just a great opportunity to deal with those tough moments. They put you in specific situations that you can then apply to future races. And again, you can't really apply these specific situations to training. For example, having to start at a certain time, having to pack and go through the process of traveling to an event, starting with other people, being around other people. So there's a lot of things.
Starting in the bad weather.
And
it's raining, and there was no option to email coaches and say, "Hey, coach, can I have a trainer workout? It's kind of raining."
Yeah, exactly.
Nope.
Yep.
Go out and be there for 7 hours.
Yep. And then also you go through the process of, there's a process, a routine that all of us have when we prepare for a race. And the more you do it, the more you get comfortable with that. So let's talk about race morning. It was raining. Let me tell you about our luck with raining in races this year. South Africa, raining. The 6 hours on the ridge, drizzling in the morning. Whole enchilada, raining.
Raining, muddy, slippery.
Raining in the morning.
Miserable.
What's the gravel race we did?
Oh, Saluda.
Saluda. Storming.
Mudfest.
Yeah. So
storms and lightning.
If it ever rains in a future triathlon, and before I would always be like watching the weather, like, oh my gosh, there's a chance. Bring it on, because I feel like I've dealt with rain so much this year. It does not faze me anymore. I can deal with it. And that's just one example of why doing more races, you have more opportunities to deal with different scenarios. If you only race 2 times a year, there's pretty good odds that you're going to have good weather. But if you race several times throughout the year, there's a good chance that you're going to get very different weather. So it was raining in the morning. We knew that. There's an app that I have on my phone. It's called Epic, EPIC Weather. And it's a really great app. We used it in the Oat Route, and I've purchased it. It's like $10 a year. And what you can do is you can take your GPX file or course file, and you can put it into, and so you can do this on like Map My Ride. You can create your own map, and then you can put it into the app, and it shows you the wind direction, the precipitation,
put your starting time
and speed, the course, the weather, the UV index. So for example, on these long rides, you can see the weather changes, the temperature changes, the precipitation. So we had been tracking the weather just to help us with what to wear and just tire pressure and things like that. And it looked like it was going to be favorable, although a little bit wet to start. Then when we woke up in the morning, when we were about to leave, the Airbnb that we were staying at, which was super cute, the gate wouldn't open. So we were kind of stuck in our Airbnb. We couldn't leave for several minutes. We couldn't figure out how to open it.
Well, then I had to unhook the hydraulics from the gate so we can actually manually open it and leave.
Yeah. And I didn't sleep so well, new place, didn't sleep well. I was sore because I had did a long run that day before, and then I drove to Dahlonega to meet up with Corel because he was already there with our friend Brian. So all these things, and it's kind of like you have 2 options. One is, oh, it's raining, the gate doesn't work. Nothing's going right. This is going to be a horrible day. I'm not going to do well. Or, okay, let's try to figure it out.
Still have a time.
And everything's going to be okay. And that was the mindset. I could tell you a week ago, if this would have happened, I probably would have broken down and cried and just would have been in a horrible place. But here I was in a really good headspace, and I was really excited, and nothing was going to stop me from doing the event. So I felt really positive, and I think having that positive outlook is very important when you do long distance events or any type of off-road event. And again, like Corel said, when you're at home, oh, it's raining, bad weather, there's always another option. But when you're at an event that, unless it's going to pose a risk for the athlete's safety, the race director is typically going to be rain or shine. We're going to do it, maybe a modification here or there, but you show up and you deal with it, but you're also around other people that they're there to deal with it as well. It was kind of interesting that it was hard to decide how to dress for this, just because like there was still a chance for rain, even though it wasn't raining at the start. It was cooler. It was in like the 50s. It wasn't going to get too warm throughout the race. So it was a little hard to decide. So originally we both were going to wear rain jackets to start, but then we both just ended up with vests and arm warmers, and that worked out well.
Yeah.
So racing for 7 hours. Well, we've done Ironmans. We've raced for 9+ hours before. But to race in one sport for over 7 hours, that's a long time. And after the race, you even asked me, did it feel like 7 hours? And I said, it didn't really feel like 7 hours, but it definitely felt like 91 miles.
Yeah.
And I think because I didn't have any concept of time during the event, similar to when we did the oat route, we didn't really know what time of the day it was, or, how far we've been riding. We were just kind of focused on in the moment. And when I do these gravel events or mountain bike events, I have a course uploaded on my Garmin computer. So I'm just looking at the computer. I don't have any metrics really to look at because I don't have power and cadence or anything on my bike, but I don't even look at time or speed or anything like that. So I'm just looking at the map, and I really have no concept other than, oh, this climb is 3.6 miles, or this segment until the next turn is 7 miles. So I'm just focused on one segment at a time. And I think that is really helpful for long distance racing, especially Ironman or half Ironman, to have your computer screen on metrics that are going to help you. Don't just have your screen on metrics that you feel aren't of any value, like the time. You want to focus on one segment at a time. And it could be a long segment before a turn. It could be a hilly segment. It could be a technical segment. But if you have a computer and you're someone who tends to look at that computer, make sure it's giving you feedback that's going to allow you to decide what's the best tool for the job in that moment. And so in a case like this race where it was very hilly, that I was just focused on the miles that I was climbing and the miles that I was descending, and I wasn't thinking ahead or how far I still had or how far I've been riding. Anything you would say about that?
Yeah, I had a map on, and with my poor eyes and not wearing my readers, there's not much I can see on the computer. So yeah, I don't care what's on it because I cannot see it.
Yeah. In a long distance race, the small details matter, or the important details.
And we don't have power meters on our gravel bikes.
Yeah.
And it's not that we would be against it, but it's kind of like funny how, when Triathletes is buying a new bike, the first thing they do, no matter what kind of bike it is, they put a power meter on and all kinds of gadgets that you can find to just kind of make it worth, because you need to know all the metrics.
Just make sure whatever you have, you're actually using it. Athletes have these expensive computers and watches and gadgets, but they don't know how to use them, or they're not using them properly. So it's really important that you take the time to think about how it's going to help you for your event. So fueling is very important in these endurance events, and these prep or tune-up races or training races, great opportunity to practice, but we practice on those events based on what we've done in training. So I can't overstate enough the importance of practicing your nutrition and training. So for this event, we both always wear our hydration packs, our USWE hydration packs. Mine holds 1.5 liters. Corral's holds 2 liters. We love our packs, and we both have sports nutrition in the packs just because that's our primary way to fuel. Easy to grab a straw and sip as we're riding on the bumpy terrain. So in mine, I'm trying out a new product from Infinite that will be coming out soon. It has fructose and maltodextrin in it, so a higher calorie, and at 360 calories per bottle. I put almost 2 bottles worth in my pack, maybe a little less than that. So I had almost about 720 calories in my pack. And then in my bottles, I didn't want to just carry water in my bottles because the aid stations would have water, and I wanted to be as self-sufficient as possible. And they also had hammer heat on the course, and I knew that the heat isn't going to give me what I need for the duration of the event. So I was just going to use that kind of very last bottle if I needed it. So I had 2 bottles on my bike, each with 3 scoops of C30. So came out to C90 of Never Second. So that was an additional 720 calories that I had on my frame. So I had about a little over 1,400 calories. And I didn't really do math and think about all these numbers. I just think about what I usually do in training, and I try not to complicate it too much. And I just want to drink my bottles and continue on. But I know in these events, especially when I don't have to run off the bike, and it's very different than a long distance try that's more about steady state and managing your effort. There's a lot more surges and bursts and easier efforts and harder efforts. So I definitely need different types of calories as well. So I do find that having some solid food and some chews, like the Power Bar chews, are my favorite. So I had 2 bags of the Power Bar chews, and I actually had a little bento box on the bike that Corral put on there, and he was really smart, and he put a kind of a plastic
Yeah, it's a heat molded sheet. So basically, reinforce the
walls.
sides, the walls of the bag that normally would be softer, so it hold the shape better, and you can just stuff it up without
it collapsing.
Yeah.
So it held its form. So I put the chews in there just because it was really easy for me to grab, and then I put the bars in my pockets. And normally I would open the bars in my pockets so they're easy to grab and eat, but because there's still a chance for rain, I didn't do that. And both the bars were like a peanut buttery texture taste, which is very comforting and delicious. I also had 1 bottle of heat at the very end, and then just a mini Coke at one of the aid stations. So I probably had close to about 2,500 calories throughout the ride if I'm looking back. But the most important thing was just consistent intake. And that's something that I'm still trying to work on, is how to combine the liquids with the solid foods to just keep my energy level stable as much as possible throughout these very long distance events.
Yeah, I would just say that the one advantage of a bike only event is that you don't have to run up the bike, meaning that you don't have to shake your body to
No.
the point that you need to go to bathroom because of everything it's shaking from the motion of running. So you can get away with a bit more on the bike and not worry about GI issues.
Yeah. What was your feeling?
I had a Morten in my hydration pack, and then I had some electrolyte drink in the bottle. I think it was a Scratch, and then I had some chews. Oh, we have this new company, fast food, the best chews I've had ever.
Yeah.
I really like those, and we'll be sharing this with you guys as well, and some other chews and a few other gels. So it was from the same company, and I really like that. And then I only stopped in one aid station in the last one towards the end, which was on the top of one of the longest climbs of the day. And then after that, it was kind of like a really bumpy, longer descent, and then some up and downs to the finish. But at that point, I was really depleted, and I finished everything I had. So I stopped at the aid station, and I look at the coolers, and one of them had the sign for the heat, which we knew that it was going to be there. But the other one was just like written on it that it was I forgot what was it.
Tailwind.
Tailwind. I was like, oh, I'll get a tailwind. So I fill up my bottle, didn't taste it, put it in the cage, and then I grab a cookie and like a half of the small can of Coke, and once I got going and take a sip, I realized it was just the water.
Wah, wah.
Yeah, but it was okay.
Yeah. Did you bonk at all during the event?
Not bong. I was just getting like pretty tired and like really tight everywhere. I have to be managing my pedal strokes, like be smart when I get up of the saddle or not to cramp.
Yeah. I bonked somewhere in the last 13 miles. It like lights out. I was like, whoa. And I rarely bonk. It's very rare for me to have like a true bonk. I can only remember in my memory one time, which was at the Oat Route last year. And on one of the climbs, it was like 3 miles to go, like third day or fourth day. And it was, yeah, pretty low there. But I had a pretty low bonk, and I'm not sure if it was just because I had the heat and I had stopped to refill the bottle. Like blood pressure drops, it's towards the end. We had a long technical descend, and then just like this really frustrating section where it's just like up and down, muddy, everything. So it was just like a lot of things together. So
And that's the thing with these events where you have there was a hard uphill or like there was a lot of climbing, right? And then you just finished a 7 mile off-road climb on the bumpy road. And the next thing, it's really bumpy descent where you don't put any kind of power. You just kind of try to manage the descent. So you're not really pedaling. So everything kind of like drops down. And now you have to start pedaling again. And it's so easy to get this bonky feeling. So that's something that I've experienced many times, and something that you can actually take to these long distance triathlons to know that, hey, like for example, the Blue Ridge 70.3, you finish the climb and you can't be just coasting down the hill. You have to keep on pedaling and keep on pressure on, or you will experience this bonky feel.
Yeah, or you might want to take a little bit of nutrition, like 15 minutes or so before you get to the top of the climb. So by the time you get to the top of the climb, you kind of get that benefit of those carbohydrates coming in. Yeah. So last few things, mindset for these long distance events, whether you're doing a non-triathlon event or a triathlon event, you really want to embrace the highs, and then also you're going to have some lows, and that's okay. Somewhere, I think I was between like 30 and 41 miles. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not even halfway. And it felt like forever. But then once you get past that, then it's like you get over the hump, and then it's okay. But there's always going to be that point where it's just like, wow, this is taking forever. But you can't do anything about it. You can just keep on riding. So you try to find joy in the situation or distract yourself. It was beautiful there. So anytime I was just like, wow, I'm so lucky I get to do this. You just start, trying to find the positives in things.
My kind of like a lower moment was, and I already talked about how I cannot see anything on the computer, but it just happened that there was a good light on that screen and everything, and the computer just buzzed and said, the beginning of the climb, and says it was like 9 out of 17, and I was like, oh wow, 9th climb out of 17. I still have a lot to go.
Oh, I remember. I thought my computer said 16, but anyways, I think I saw one of them and it was like 6 out of 16, and I was like, of climbs, and I was like, wow, we still have a long way. So then I was like, just get to 10, because then once I get to 10, then I only have 6. So you just play these games, and I think you learn these things when you do more events. So it's so important to look for these different events. If you're a triathlete doing the gravel, road biking, running events, open water swim events, bike events, whatever other events you can think of, it can just teach you so much. And it also, these events give you motivation. They help you assess what's working, what's not working in your training. They can keep you inspired. I just think there's so many benefits from stepping out of the norm from what you're used to and trying some different events. Now, the last thing is today we did a mountain bike off-road triathlon at the Whitewater Center. It was fantastic. We had so much fun. We kept saying, to ourselves as we were racing, like, this is so much fun. This is so much fun. Like, don't want it to end. It's just so much fun. And I think that's really good. These events have really helped me in my longevity and passion for triathlon since I've been doing long distance tries for 17 years now. That's just changing things up, just fills my cup, and it keeps me excited to keep doing triathlons.
And I don't think we need to go into too many details, but just to kind of touch on like why it was very beneficial for
Yeah.
both of us, and like some of the main takeaways. So we both will be doing kind of like a bigger level off-road triathlon in 2 weeks in Oak Mountain, Alabama. It'll be a part of the Extra World Tour Series, and it's a bigger race, and this was an opportunity to practice everything for that. And although it was a smaller race, it was in a great venue, and actually probably one of the best courses that we can experience on the on the Extra circuit, because it was the bike was 99.9% on the single track, so basically only just getting in and out of the transition was the gravel road, and then everything was single track. And it was a really unique event because we swam in the river for 1K, and then we had our shoes right outside of the swim when we finished, put on the shoes, and then we ran half a mile through the trails and the gravel road to the transition. So that was unique.
Carrying our wetsuits.
Carrying the wetsuit, yeah, that was unique, and
I loved it.
I loved it too. So it was really cool. But the main thing for me, at least, was that I wanted to practice everything that I want to do in that extra race in 2 weeks, and I wanted to try some new things. So I actually had a road triathlon shoes with adapters for SPD cleats for the off-road pedals, knowing that the conditions on the course were good, so I won't need to be getting off the bike and push the bike. So that didn't bother me that the shoes did not have any kind of tread, and it was the quick triathlon shoe to get in and out. So just try to maximize minimize the time in the transitions, and just maximize the performance. And although I had a pretty good lead, basically from after the swim, starting the run to the transition, I took a lead, and then I only extended it. But I could kind of settle to say, I can just take it easy, but that was not the point. I wanted to practice like quick transition, so I really focused on that. I wanted to practice the skills on the bike, and do it fast. I wanted to practice everything on the run. So the purpose of this race was to really the dress rehearsal. And I think I found this really often with athletes when they do these like lower level races or like local races, they just kind of like almost like brush it off, like, oh, it's not an Ironman, it's not a big deal, it doesn't matter, I don't need to do this or I need to do that. But you are, if you go into the race with this mindset, you really are missing out. You're missing out on great opportunity to practice these things under the race environment, because you can be practicing the transition at home all day long and you will never feel the same, because you don't have that adrenaline rush, you don't have the high heart rate, the high breathing rate, and other people around that are in your way sometimes, so you can never get the same experience. So it's such a valuable lesson and so beneficial to your other bigger races.
Yeah I was going to say the same thing, that that the Ironman branded events are great, but it's a big deal to race with a couple thousand people, but you can still get so much by racing with 50 people or 100 people or a couple hundred people. So don't just think of races that these big scale races and you only want to do these races, but think about all that you can gain from local events, different events, non-triathlon events, because you can still practice things and build so much confidence in those events, so that when you do get to that big scale event, that you're primed and ready to go and you have that experience to be able to perform at your best. All right. Well, if you have any questions, as always, send us an email, let us know, and keep up the great work, and look for some non-triathlon events to spice things up. Bye.
Cheers.